Hi there. Join me today as I paint this watercolour Christmas card. This is quite a simple design, but I think very effective, using only a few colours. I've sketched the design out using a compass for the circles, but you can use anything that's round. And I'm brushing some clear water onto the baubles. I'm just making sure that the water doesn't sit on the surface. You don't want it to be soaking wet, just damp. Now I'm going to mix, I'm going to get a few red colours, well, pinky reds really. I'll list in the description below which colours I'm using. So I'm using 3 different shades basically for each bauble. So I'm using a pink, Alizarin Crimson and a purple. Now, baubles are very reflective of other colours hanging around them. So I don't want this to look too smooth. I'm sort of painting this in a little bit patchy and letting these colours sort of blend into each other. Because it's a glass type, shiny, reflective surface on the baubles, they're going to pick up sort of colours and shadows. I'm sort of trying to keep the darker colours to the bottom left and then just a little bit up to the top right. And I'll be doing a couple of layers onto each bauble. So, I'm not trying to get this perfect and the colours strong enough on the first go. I'm going to let this dry and then I'm going to come back and paint another layer. Now I'm moving on to the blue and I'm using an ultramarine, and I will then use like a turquoise colour, and the dark colour, I'm not sure what that colour is, but I absolutely love it, but I will put the name down in the description. I just love that colour, it's just so rich. Again, I'm deliberately letting it sort of blend into each other and not be too not too smoothed out. Now, it seemed when I did this card, it seemed that everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Isn't that always the way? And you might have noticed there I got a little bit on the outside of the bauble, which I wiped up with my finger. Don't worry too much about that, because with this project you can get away with it, because we're going to be doing like drippy paint underneath each bauble. Now here I'm doing the green, and I've got about 3 shades of green. I think that's Sap Green, Hooker's Green, and then I've got a lovely dark shadow green. That top set of paints, I can't remember how many years I've actually had it. It's a Windsor Newton, I think it's the Cotman brand. I've had that for so many years. Now, I did realise after I started that I should have put some tape down to stop the paint sort of running to one side or the other on the surface of the paper. Okay, I'm using, I think, a Jelly Roll pen, Jelly Roll Metallic Gold. to paint in just a little cap on the top of the bauble. Well, I should say to colour in the cap. And just a little tip, I would actually let the paint, the watercolour paint, dry first. Because if you're anything like me, you'll drag your hand straight across it. And as I said, today was a day where if anything could go wrong, it did go wrong. Now I'm drawing in, that's a silver pen, metallic jelly roll that I'm starting to draw in the little string on the top. But I changed my mind and decided that it would look better in gold. You could do any colour, really. And those pens, I discovered that because I've had them for quite a while, or hadn't used them for quite some time, I had to go over it quite a few times to get enough colour out of it. Okay, so the baubles were dry, but now I'm remoistening with the water, just a very small amount of the water. And I'm just coming in with the same colours and deepening up. I'm starting to get a little bit more depth. Now coming in with the turquoise. A bit darker down the bottom left. Now, of course, being watercolour, as that dries, it will, as the paint dries, it won't look as vibrant. Now, if you can see that I've just sort of, on that top right, that I just cleaned my brush and just mopped up a little bit of that colour from up there. There was a bit too much. And if you keep a piece of paper towel handy, if you think that you've put too much paint in an area, while it's still wet, you can just dab that with the paper towel. Oh, I love that dark green. It makes, to me, that sort of looks like it's hanging on the Christmas tree, and that's a reflection of the branches. Now, with the pinky coloured one, I've picked up a bit more like of a true red and just put that, just using that as a bit of a highlight colour there. And it was a bit too strong at the top, so I've dabbed it with a paper towel. And now I'm going to paint in the holly leaves. And I'm just using the same greens as I've used on the bauble. And I'm leaving like a white line up the center as the leaf vein. Basically, I'm just colouring the leaf in, and then I'm dabbing a little bit of the darker green back in. Now I've done something here that I wouldn't normally do. I outlined the whole leaf, then came back and painted the inside. Usually I would only do one side at a time because the paint can dry and leave a hard line, and you don't want that to happen. Here come the holly berries. I'm just using a little bit of the darker Alizarin Crimson to shadow the bottom. Okay, I've just mixed up a little bit of browny green using the green on the palette plus some raw umber to paint in the twiggy branch. Okay, make sure that your painting is really dry. And then come in with some water, clean water, brush underneath the bauble, and using the same colours you painted the bauble with, we're going to dab that colour in and let it run into the clean water. And this is where you can be a little bit messy. It's good, this is quite therapeutic. Let it drip down a bit. If you go too far, you can just dab it off with paper towel. Now I'm just cleaned off my brush and I'm just dabbing into the edges just to soften it into the water. Again, just the same colours that I painted the ornament with. I'm just dabbing with some paper towel if it runs too far. Okay, once I've done that, I've dried it off and I'm going to put some specks onto there, but I had to improvise and find something, the shape of the bauble, to cover it so I didn't get the specking over everything else. I did manage to get it all over me, but that's another story. That little watercolour dish came in very handy. Okay, so mixing up some of the blues with some water. Having a little water squirter bottle is very handy. And then I'm going to just hit onto the brush I filled with the coloured water onto the paper with another brush. Same thing with the red. And now the green. You can see why I said it didn't really matter if you made a little bit of a mess along the way. You can easily cover it up. So I'm using some acrylic gouache, some white acrylic gouache, and I'm painting a little dot of highlight onto the holly berries. Okay, so this was one of the ornaments off my tree, so I'm going to use that as a pattern for my design. And you could do it freehand, but I'm just showing you here, drawing it on with a white watercolour pencil. Okay, so I could use the point of the round brush I was using, but if you wanted to get, if you know, you were a bit worried about getting finer detail, I'm using just a very fine brush and watered down the acrylic gouache to paint this this design on. But if I had a white paint pen, I would use that. But the two I tried to use, of course, because I hadn't used them for so long, wouldn't work. But it's always very handy to have white acrylic paint in your toolbox if you paint in watercolour. Actually, my main medium that I like to paint in is acrylic. Well, acrylic gouache, which is really just a matte flow acrylic or a matte fluid acrylic, because it's so versatile. Now we're starting to look Christmassy. Now, of course, if you're right-handed, it would have made more sense to start on the blue bauble and work your way across the page. But of course, as I said today, I don't think things didn't quite work that way. Now I'm just using some of that darker turquoisey blue of the watercolour and painting the stripes down either side of the white. So I've got the gold pen and I'm just adding some little dots onto the white paint once it's dried. I hope you enjoyed painting with me today. Merry Christmas, everyone.